Alabama is full of stories buried in its hills, rivers, and deep forests, from strange carvings hidden in canyon walls to forgotten mounds, lost villages, and unexplained lights. The state holds traces of people who left behind more questions than answers. These mysteries sit quietly in the landscape, waiting for anyone curious enough to look closer. The Moundville Earthwork Enigma. When you walk into Moundville for the first time, it doesn't feel like you're stepping into an old archaeological park. It feels more like you've wandered into a memory that the land is still trying to hold together. The air has this heavy quiet to it, almost like the ground is waiting for you to notice something important. You see the mounds rising from the earth in a wide circle, each one shaped with care, each one placed like it mattered, far more than any of us can explain today. And that's where the mystery starts. These earthworks aren't random piles of soil. They're arranged with purpose, precision, and a sense of order that doesn't match the simple image many people have of ancient North American cultures. The moment you stand in the center and look around, you can tell the site wasn't just a town, it was something bigger. Most people picture the builders of Moundville as farmers, living quiet lives by the river, but when you see the layout up close, you get a very different impression. The mounds line up in a large square around a central plaza. Some are tall platform mounds that once held buildings on top. Others are smaller and more spread out. There's a rhythm to the whole place. Nothing seems random. The ancestors who lived here put in enormous labor to build this. Imagine carrying soil basket by basket, day after day, until each mound reached its full shape. That kind of effort doesn't happen unless the work is tied to meaning, tradition, or something sacred. As you walk the grounds, it's easy to picture the place filled with people, leaders standing on the tall mounds, families gathered in the plaza, ceremonies unfolding as the sun moved across the sky. But the strange part is how much we still don't understand about why Moundville grew so fast and why it eventually emptied out. It was once one of the largest cities in North America, home to thousands. For its time, it was a major cultural and political center. And then, almost as suddenly as it rose, it declined. That alone makes people wonder what really happened here. Something else hits you when you look at the earthworks more closely. They weren't just built for living and governing. They were also shaped around beliefs about life, death, and the world beyond. Many of the artifacts found here show symbols that repeat across the whole site. Birds, hands with open eyes, snakes, sun circles. These weren't decorations. They were part of a larger story, one that the people of Moundville seemed to live by. Whatever these symbols meant, they were powerful enough to guide how the entire city was designed. What adds another layer to the mystery is how carefully the mounds line up with each other. The plaza in the center is almost perfectly shaped, and the spacing between the mounds isn't random. They aren't simply stacked steps of dirt. Some have rounded corners, some have flattened tops. They're built in ways that make you feel as if the builders were trying to copy something. Maybe mountains, maybe the homes of spirits, maybe something no one remembers anymore. And that's where the imagination starts to wander. You can't help it. Standing here, even with the sun warming the fields and the world feeling calm, the land still feels charged with memory. People often ask why Moundville was abandoned. It's one of the biggest questions tied to the site. There's no single answer. There are hints of climate shifts. There are signs that social systems may have broken down. There's evidence of changes in trade and leadership, but none of those fully explain how a strong, organized, and deeply rooted city could fade out so completely that the land took back almost everything within a few generations. It's as if the people left with intention, knowing they would not return. Walking along the pathways today, it's easy to imagine those final years. Maybe there were tensions inside the community. Maybe the leaders lost influence. Maybe people started moving toward other centers. But even those ideas don't quite match the silence that hangs over the site. It feels too careful, too complete, as if the end of Moundville wasn't a collapse but something more controlled. That's part of what keeps the mystery alive. Another thing that stands out is how the earthworks have survived. These mounds have held their shape through storms, floods, and everything Alabama's weather can throw at them. That tells you something about the builders. They didn't just pile dirt, they engineered these structures with layers of clay and soil that lock together like a living structure. Even now, when you walk up one of the mounds and look out over the fields, it's hard not to feel impressed by the skill it took to make something last this long without stone or metal. As the wind moves across the field, you might notice moments where the place feels strangely alive. It could be the way the grass shifts, it could be the way the mounds cast long shadows when the sun drops low, or it could just be the simple weight of standing where generations lived, worked, and prayed. Many visitors talk about the same feeling, that sense of being watched, not in a frightening way, but in a quiet, steady way, like the past is paying attention. Even with everything we know from studies and excavations, there's still so much we're guessing about. The people who built Moundville didn't leave written records. Their stories were passed through generations by memory and voice. That means large pieces of their world faded over time, but the earthwork stayed. And because they stayed, people still come here and try to make sense of them. The biggest question is simple: what was Moundville meant to be at its height? Was it a capital city, a ceremonial center, a place of pilgrimage, or was it all of those at once? The sheer size of the plaza suggests gatherings on a massive scale. The tall mounds suggest leadership and spirituality. The repeating symbols suggest a belief system that reached far beyond the ground beneath your feet. Today, when you stand in the center and turn in a slow circle, you might feel the land pressing its story forward, even though it can't speak it out loud. You see the outlines of a society that understood the world in a way we're still trying to grasp. You see a place that was planned with care, shaped with effort, and left behind with intention. And as calm as it looks now, that quiet hides a lot of unanswered questions. The mystery of Moundville isn't about ghosts or strange lights or anything dramatic. It's about the weight of human history, shaped by hands we'll never meet and ideas we can't fully decode. It's about how much can be built without stone, without metal, without writing, just through vision, strength, and shared belief. And it's about how a great city can rise, thrive, and then slip away, leaving only silent earthworks to mark its presence. When you walk back toward the edge of the site and look over your shoulder, the mounds almost feel like they're watching you go. Not in a haunting way, but in a steady, patient way. They've stood here for centuries, and they'll likely stand for many more. Whatever the truth behind Moundville was, it's still buried in the shape of those mounds, waiting for anyone willing to feel the story instead of just studying it. The prehistoric mining tunnels of Red Mountain. If you walk along the slopes of Red Mountain today, you mostly see quiet trails, rust-colored soil, and the remains of old industrial shafts from the iron boom. But if you look a little closer, there's something older hiding beneath all of that history. Tunnels that don't match the machinery, the blueprints, or the age of Birmingham's mining era. And that's where the mystery of the prehistoric mining tunnels begins. At first, most people think the tunnels must be leftovers from the late 1800s, when iron mining turned Birmingham into a fast-growing city. But once you study the cuts and the shapes inside the rock, you start noticing details that don't fit with the tools from that time. The walls aren't always straight like you'd expect from steel drills. Some are oddly smooth, curved in a way that feels almost hand-shaped. And there are narrow side chambers that wouldn't have served any purpose for modern miners. It creates this uneasy feeling that someone was digging into Red Mountain long before there were records of anyone living here who had the tools to do it. Walking through the area, you can picture early workers stumbling onto these strange openings and quietly wondering why they were there. Imagine being a miner in the late 1800s pushing through a tunnel your crew just blasted open, only to hit a hollow space no one expected. You shine a lantern into the dark and see surfaces that don't look like anything your tools could have made. Do you tell someone? Do you just keep digging and pretend it's nothing? Stories like that pop up in old local talk, and even though most of it can't be proven, it adds to the strange feeling that Red Mountain has layers of history that never made it into the textbooks. One thing that stands out about these older tunnels is their size. They're smaller, tighter, and appear to follow veins of red ore with surprising accuracy. It's as if whoever dug them already knew the layout of the mountain. You can see where the tunnel curves just a little to the left, as if following a seam, then drops lower in a smooth slope. It doesn't match the sharp, practical angles of later operations. These earlier tunnels feel more personal, almost like they were shaped by people who knew the mountain by touch rather than by survey tools. The biggest question is who could have dug them. Red Mountain ore is tough, full of iron, and not something you chip away at casually. It takes strength and the right kind of tools. But long before the industrial age, the common belief is that native groups didn't have metal picks or chisels strong enough for ironstone. That doesn't mean they couldn't have mined here. They used stone tools for all kinds of work, but the smoothness and depth of some of these tunnels make people wonder if they had methods we don't fully understand today. That's one of the reasons the mystery keeps pulling people in. You walk past entrances partly sealed by dirt and roots, and you get this odd tension between the natural world and the carved world. You see the mountain trying to erase what someone else revealed. Some passages twist deeper than you'd expect from simple resource gathering. They don't look like quick digs for surface ore. They look planned, They look intentional. Another strange part is how deep some of these supposed prehistoric cuts go. They don't stop after a few feet. They continue far enough that you feel the temperature drop around you when you walk inside. The air gets still. The sound of the outside world disappears. And even though you know you're still close to the surface, it feels like you've walked into a different time. The deeper you go, the more careful your steps become. The floors are uneven, the ceiling's low, and every so often you see tool marks that don't look like anything from the industrial period. If you crouch near the walls and run your hand over the stone, the texture changes from rough to oddly smooth in places. It makes you wonder whether the people who dug here used repeated scraping, or if water and time shaped the stone afterward. It's hard to tell, and that's part of the charm of the Red Mountain mystery. Nothing gives you a clean answer. Every detail raises a new question. Some people think these tunnels could be connected to early native copperworking traditions. Others believe there may have been small, isolated groups who experimented with early metal tools, even if it wasn't widespread. And then there are a few who lean toward more unusual possibilities. Lost groups, forgotten techniques, maybe even an earlier culture that left almost nothing behind except the tunnels themselves. None of these ideas have solid proof, but when you stand inside one of the older chambers, it's easy to see why people wonder. What really adds weight to the mystery is how the ore from Red Mountain was always valuable. Iron ore, hematite, red pigment, all of it had meaning long before modern industries showed up. Red pigment in particular shows up in burial sites all across ancient North America. It's tied to ceremony, to spiritual beliefs, to stories about life and death, so it isn't impossible that groups long before the industrial era came here to gather what they needed. The question is how deep they went and how advanced their digging methods were. Walking further along the slope, you sometimes see blocked entrances where dirt has slid down over time. Behind those, locals say there are more strange cuts, more signs of older work. The mountain has been reshaped so many times by heavy industry that it's hard to tell where the prehistoric tunnels begin and where later operations took over. But the pieces we can still see suggest a past that's more complex than the simple timelines written in history books. Red Mountain has always been a place where practical work meets mystery. The modern mining era tore huge sections of the mountain open, leaving behind scars that still show today. But beneath those scars, hidden in quiet pockets the machines never reached, are these older shapes, narrow passages, curved chambers, and smooth walls that feel like the work of hands guided by knowledge we no longer understand. Even when you step outside again and breathe fresh air, the tunnels stay in your mind. They leave this lingering curiosity, a steady pull that makes you want to go back in and look again. You start asking yourself simple questions that have no simple answers. Who dug these? How? Why here? Why so deep? You imagine people standing where you just stood, working by torchlight or daylight, filtering through cracks, carrying stones out by hand, shaping the mountain one long scrape at a time. Today, hikers pass by without knowing how much history is buried under their feet. The trails are peaceful, the trees are tall and quiet. But once you learn about the tunnels, the whole mountain feels different. You start checking the sides of the paths for openings. You look for spots where the rock folds back into darkness. You feel the weight of ages pressing up from below. The prehistoric tunnels of Red Mountain don't offer big, flashy answers. They don't present ancient inscriptions or forgotten artifacts. Instead, they give you fragments, small hints carved into stone that suggest someone was here long before the official story starts. The mystery lives in those details, those small marks that don't match any tool we expect, those smooth curves where the rock shouldn't be smooth. And as quiet as the mountain feels now, you can't escape the sense that you're walking over a place shaped by many hands across many eras. Red Mountain holds its secrets well, but the tunnels prove the story didn't start with factories and furnaces. It started with unknown workers who saw value in the red stone and went after it with means we still don't fully understand. Even after you leave, the memory of the tunnels stays with you. The dim corners, the cold air, the strange marks, all of it lingers, and you're left with the simple truth that some mysteries don't fade. They stay underground, waiting for someone curious enough to notice them and brave enough to step inside. The Petroglyphs of Little River Canyon. If you stand at the edge of Little River Canyon on a quiet morning, the first thing you notice is the sound. The river doesn't just flow, it echoes through the walls of the gorge in this calm, steady rhythm that almost feels older than the land itself. The air is clean, the cliffs rise like massive stone pages, and for a moment the whole place feels untouched. But when you hike a little deeper into the canyon and find the right rock faces, that calm feeling shifts. Carved into the stone are marks that shouldn't still be here. Figures, shapes, lines, and symbols made by hands from a time we barely understand. These are the petroglyphs of Little River Canyon, and they turn a beautiful landscape into something far more mysterious. At first, the carvings look simple. You see a swirl, a figure, maybe a track or a circle. But the longer you stare, the more the shapes start to feel deliberate. They aren't scratches made by animals or marks left by water. They're carved with effort, with intention. Some show tall human-like forms with outstretched arms. Some look like animals that once roamed this region. Others don't match anything we can name. And once you see one carving, your eyes start picking out more, almost hidden by lichen, cracks, and shadows. One of the things that makes these petroglyphs so strange is how scattered they are. They aren't grouped in one neat place like a planned gallery. Instead, they appear on cliff faces, on boulders near the river, on sheltered overhangs, even in spots where you have to climb a bit to see them. It makes you wonder whether they were made over many generations, each group adding something new, or whether they were meant for different purposes, stories, warnings, markers, or maybe spiritual messages. When you touch the carvings carefully, because they're fragile, you feel how shallow but precise the cuts are. They were made with stone tools long before metal arrived here. That alone shows you how patient the ancient carvers must have been. Carving into sandstone with stone tools isn't quick work. You need time, skill, and a reason strong enough to keep going. And whatever that reason was, it left a trail deep in the canyon that still hasn't been fully decoded. The biggest question is what the symbols mean. Some people think the figures could be part of old stories or mythic beings. Some believe the circles and spirals represent the movement of the sun or the seasons. A few patterns seem to line up with the river itself, like they were marking paths or crossings. But then there are carvings that don't match any clear pattern. They don't look like animals or people. They don't look like maps or signs. They're abstract, almost dreamlike, as if the artist was trying to capture something seen during ceremony or vision. Walking through the canyon, it's easy to imagine small groups gathering near these rocks. Maybe they carved during important events, births, hunts, meetings. Maybe they marked places where something meaningful happened. And maybe some carvings weren't meant for other people at all. Maybe they were offerings to the land, left there for the spirits tied to the canyon's cliffs and waters. Little River Canyon doesn't feel like an ordinary place. The walls rise sharply, trapping sound in strange ways. The river bends through narrow cuts where the light hits differently at each hour of the day. When you stand near the petroglyphs, you feel a shift in the air, something old, something steady, something that makes you lower your voice without even thinking about it. That atmosphere might be exactly why ancient people chose this place as a canvas. One of the most interesting things about the petroglyphs is how close they sit to natural danger. Some carvings are right above steep drops or narrow ledges. It makes you wonder whether the locations were chosen because they were hard to reach. Maybe they weren't meant for everyone. Maybe only certain people, story keepers, shamans, or leaders were allowed to carve in those spots. The effort of reaching the stone could have been part of the ceremony. There are also carvings near places where the river thunders through the canyon, sending up mist and spray. When you sit there long enough, you understand why ancient people felt a sense of power in these spots. The water moves with force, carving its own paths through the rock. It's the kind of natural energy that would have felt sacred. If you believed the river had a spirit, you'd carve near it too. As the light changes, the carvings change too. In the morning, shadows fill the grooves and make the shapes look sharper. At noon, the marks flatten and almost disappear. In the evening, the setting sun brings them back to life with deep contrast. It makes you think the ancient artists knew this. Maybe they carved with the sun in mind. Maybe certain carvings were meant to be seen only at certain times of day or during specific seasons. The canyon's petroglyphs also raise another question. How old are they really? Some may be a few hundred years old. Others could be thousands. The styles vary, and the weathering on some of the figures is so deep that they must have been carved long before the first European settlers stepped foot in this region. The age adds another layer of mystery, because it means the canyon has been a sacred or meaningful place for far longer than most people realize. As you keep exploring, the canyon takes on a different feeling. It stops being just a scenic gorge and becomes a long living timeline. Each carving is a clue, a moment where someone left a part of their story on stone. Some carvings appear faint, almost erased by wind and rain, as if the canyon itself chooses what to keep and what to let fade. Others remain sharp, holding their shapes with surprising strength. If you sit quietly near one of the larger carvings, listening to the river echo below, you start to imagine what the ancient carvers might have felt. Maybe they heard the same echo. Maybe they felt the same pull of the place. Maybe they carved because they believed the rock would carry their message forward to whoever came next, even if that person was hundreds or thousands of years away. Today, hikers walk past these carvings without always realizing what they're seeing. Some think they're scratches, some think they're natural lines in the rock. But once you know what to look for, you can't unsee them. You start spotting figures on far walls. You notice marks that blend into the stone until the light hits them just right. And with each new carving, the story of the canyon grows heavier and more meaningful. Little River Canyon will always be known for its beauty, but the petroglyphs give it a deeper identity, a place where ancient hands shaped memories into stone. The people who carved here are long gone, but their marks stayed. They survived storms, floods, and the slow crumble of rock, and even now, they hold their secrets close. The mystery isn't just what the symbols mean, it's why the canyon mattered so much to the people who carved them. Whatever the answer is, it's carved into these stones, waiting for those who take the time to stop, look, and feel the story still humming through the canyon walls. The Fort Payne Petroforms. If you hike along the quiet ridges around Fort Payne, you don't expect to find anything unusual. Most of the landscape feels plain at first glance. Pine stands, rocky clearings, patches of mountain laurel. But once you reach the high, flat stretches of Lookout Mountain, the ground begins to tell a different story. Scattered across these open spaces are stones arranged in shapes too neat, too organized, and too intentional to be accidents. Circles, pathways, spirals, lines that run straight when nature almost never does. These are the Fort Payne Petroforms, and once you notice them, the whole mountain starts to feel different. At first, you might think the rocks are just leftovers from old settlement work or farming, but the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that these shapes were planned. Some stones are small, some are heavy enough that it would take several people to move them, and they're placed in patterns that line up with each other across surprising distances. The quiet woods around you suddenly feel like you're walking inside an ancient blueprint, one that doesn't have a key or a legend to explain it. The strangest thing is how subtle the petroforms are. They're not tall like mounds or walls. They're low to the ground, almost blending into the earth, as if they were meant to be noticed only by people who already knew where to look. When you stand over a circle of stones, you feel a pull to step inside, just to see what the pattern feels like from the middle. When you follow a long line of rocks stretching toward a ridge, it's hard not to wonder if the line once pointed to something important. Maybe the sun, maybe a seasonal event, maybe a gathering place. What makes these formations even more mysterious is how little we understand about when they were made. Some think the rocks could date back hundreds of years. Others believe they may be much older, part of a tradition that existed long before written history reached this part of the continent. The lack of answers makes the petroforms feel heavier, like they're holding on to stories that the land hasn't given up yet. Walking through the area, you notice how carefully the stones are placed. They aren't thrown down or scattered. They rest in arrangements that suggest purpose. Some circles are almost perfect, with stones spaced just far enough apart to create a clear boundary. Others form long serpentine lines that seem to mimic the shape of the mountain ridges. And then there are the shapes that don't match anything familiar. Odd clusters that might have meant something specific to the people who arranged them. One thing that stands out the most is the silence. The air on Lookout Mountain feels still, almost watchful. When you move around the petroforms, you hear the crunch of dried leaves under your feet, and the soft wind passing through the trees, but not much else. It's easy to imagine small groups of people gathering here long ago, speaking quietly, moving stones, watching the sky, maybe marking time or seasons. Maybe they were honoring something. Maybe they were building something symbolic. The lack of noise makes your imagination fill in the blanks. Some researchers believe the petroforms could have been used as calendars. Certain lines might point toward the sunrise during solstices or equinoxes. Some circles could mark ceremonial spaces. It makes sense when you think about how many ancient cultures used the sky as a guide. If you sit down near one of the lines at dawn, watching the horizon shift from gray to orange, you start to see how the stones might have helped people track the passing of the year. But not every formation fits neatly into that idea. Some shapes seem to break the pattern entirely. The deeper you explore, the more the questions grow. Who had the time and reason to move these stones? What tools did they use? Why choose this ridge instead of a nearby valley? Did the people who built these shapes pass their knowledge down, or did the meaning fade even before the stones were forgotten? When you stand near the biggest petroform clusters, these questions sit heavy in your mind. Some people believe the stones may have been connected to spiritual practices. The patterns might have had meanings only a small group understood. Certain stones sit near natural overlooks where the land drops away into sweeping views of the valley below. Those spots carry a sense of intention, like they were chosen because they felt close to the sky. If you stand on one of these overlooks with the wind hitting your face, it's not hard to picture ceremonies taking place there, people singing or praying, the sound carrying out into the open air. Other petroforms lie near streams or natural springs. Water has always been important to ancient people, not just for survival but for ceremony. The stones near water might have marked special places, healing spots, meeting points, or boundaries between different groups. You can still hear the faint trickle of the water as it moves through the rocks, a steady sound that hasn't changed in centuries. Some formations are harder to reach, hidden in thick clusters of trees or placed on steep slopes. When you climb up to them, you feel the effort required, and it makes you wonder why anyone would choose such a tough location. That effort must have meant something. Maybe those spots were considered sacred. Maybe they were meant to stay hidden from outsiders. One of the most thought-provoking parts of the Petroforms is how unfinished some patterns look. You find lines that stop abruptly, circles with gaps, spirals that start strong and fade halfway through. Were these formations damaged over time, or were they never completed? Maybe the people who made them moved on before finishing their work. Or maybe the gaps were intentional, part of a design we don't understand. If you kneel beside one of the stone paths and place your hand on a rock, you feel the warmth of the sun, or the coolness of the shade. You feel the weight of years pressed into it. These stones have weathered storms, fires, and the slow growth of roots around them. They've stayed in place long after the people who arranged them disappeared. That alone gives them a sense of quiet endurance. As the day goes on, the light changes the look of the petroforms. In the early morning, long shadows stretch across the patterns, making the shapes sharper. Around noon, the stones flatten into the dirt visually, almost blending out of sight. In the late afternoon, the warm light brings them back into focus. It makes you wonder whether the ancient builders used light as part of the design. Maybe the stones were meant to be read at dawn or dusk. Even after spending hours walking the ridge, you never feel like you've seen everything. Every time you think you understand one pattern, another appears that breaks your theory. That's part of the magic of the Fort Payne Petroforms. They refuse to be simplified. They push you to slow down, look closer, and accept that not every ancient creation has a clear explanation waiting for you. Today, most people who visit Lookout Mountain go for the views, the trails, the quiet. They don't always notice the stone shapes underfoot. They might kick a loose pebble or step past a line of rocks without knowing they're crossing into a place shaped by human hands long ago. But once you learn what to look for, the mountain feels layered. You start seeing patterns where others see random rocks. You can stand on one of the higher outlooks, looking down at the wide stretch of Alabama hills and valleys, and feel the weight of time sitting on the ridge with you. These petroforms aren't grand monuments. They're not towering structures. They're quiet messages from a people who lived close to the land and took the time to shape it in ways we still don't understand. As you leave the ridge and step back onto the main trail, you feel a mix of curiosity and respect. The stones stay behind, patient as ever, holding their place, and you can't shake the feeling that you've walked through something important, something that was never meant to be loud or obvious, something meant for those who take the time to look down, to pause, and to listen to what the land is still whispering through its old patterns of stone.